welcome back to We Be Kids again. Typically you're used to seeing me up in the forest telling stories, but this morning I was talking to some people and I was telling them about a story that I've recorded for the We Be Kids website, and when I went to check it wasn't there. And then I realised and remembered that I hadn't recorded it at all. So I thought that I would get a fire going here at home and I would tell you this special little tale. Now, this tale is a folk tale. It's all the way from Haiti and it is called The Story of Topeka. And this is a story about always being there for your friends. So off in a thick, dense forest, there was a small cottage that was made of slate. And the cottage had lovely white windows and a red door. And the cottage had a big chimney. And coming out of the chimney was lots and lots of smoke. And that's because inside the cottage there was a young girl called Topeka. And she was busy making a big soup over the fire. You see, Topeka was always busy because Topeka lived in this small cottage with her mother, and her mother thought that it was Topeka's duty to do all of the jobs for her. Topeka never had a moment of rest to play. She always had all kinds of different jobs to do. And deep down, her mother only ever wanted her for the jobs. She was not a great mother at all. And then one morning, Topeka woke up and she was wandering around the house, sweeping the dust, and her mother come out. And her mother said, "Topeka, there's no water for making soup and there's no wood for making fire. You must go and get them both." And Topeka said, "But if I do that, it will take way too long. Why don't I go to the well for the water and you go and collect the firewood?" Now the mother didn't like to be told what to do, but she knew that if they both went, the jobs would be done quicker. So Topeka picked up a bucket and headed off to the well, while her mother headed out into the wood to collect firewood. And the mother had wandered off, and as she wandered, she collected wood and she made lots of little piles. And after about an hour or so, she looked around and she realised that she'd piled so much wood that she couldn't carry it herself. She said, "How am I supposed to carry all of this wood back to the cottage?" And just like magic, from behind a rock appeared a big, burly man. And he came out and said, "I will help you carry all this wood, do not worry." And he scooped it all together, almost like magic. And he picked it all up and he put it on his back. And Topeka's mother guided him back through the forest until they arrived at the cottage. When they got there, Topeka's mother asked him to put it down in the garden. And he put it down, and then he turned round and he said to Topeka's mother, "I've helped you. Now what have you got for me?" And Topeka's mother said, I don't have anything. I just have this little cottage." He said, "Well, you must give me something. I've helped you, now how are you going to help me?" Topeka's mother thought. She thought, what could I possibly give him? And then she had an idea. She said, "I have this daughter who's very, very good at doing jobs, but she's often under my feet. What about if I give her to you?" The burly man said, Yes, you can give her to me. I will put her to work in the forest." So Topeka's mother said, "Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m, I will send her down to the well. She will be wearing a red dress. When she gets there, pick her up and take her off for yourself." So they agreed, and off the burly man went. But what they didn't know is that Topeka had arrived back early from collecting the water. She was hidden in the kitchen under the window, and all the while she was listening. She heard what her mother said, and she knew immediately that she had to do something, otherwise she'd be taken off into the forest. So she thought hard, and she had an idea. She put on her coat and she ran off through the woods until she came to a small village where all of her friends lived. And there she went around and she knocked on all of her friends' doors. She said, "Could you please help me? Tomorrow I need you to meet me at the well at 11 o'clock and wear a red dress." And all of her friends said, "Of course, Topeka, we will do anything to help you." So Topeka went back home and she went to sleep. And the next morning she woke up and Topeka's mum rather predictably said, "Topeka, put on your red dress and go down to the well and fetch back some water." So Topeka put on her red dress and she went down to the well. And when she got there, all of her friends were there, all wearing red dresses. And then from out of the bushes came the big burly man. And he looked around and he could see that he was confused and angry. He ran up to one of the girls and he pointed at her. He said, "Are you Topeka?" And from across the circle, somebody else shouted out, "I'm Topeka." And he turned around and he ran across and he went up to another. He said, "Are you Topeka?" And from across the circle, somebody else called out, "I'm Topeka." He didn't see who, but he ran across. He said, "Are you Topeka?" And all together, all at once, all of the girls called out, "We're Topeka too. I'm Topeka, we're Topeka, we're Topeka too." And the man put his hands on his head and he turned and he ran off into the forest. And all of Topeka's friends came together. They had a big hug and they headed off. And Topeka filled the water. But before Topeka had got back, the man had ran to the cottage. When he got there, he called out Topeka's mum. And Topeka saw this and she ran and she hid inside again. And he said, "You tricked me. When I got there were lots of people all wearing red dresses." And the mother said, "Well, that can't possibly be. I sent her down in her red dress." He said, "You better not trick me again." So the mother said, "Well, tomorrow I will send her again at 11 o'clock. This time she will be wearing a black dress." So they agreed. And all the while Topeka was listening, and Topeka heard. So Topeka went down to all of her friends again. Reluctantly she knocked on the door and apologetically she said, "Could you please help me again tomorrow? Please meet me at the well at 11 o'clock and wear a black dress." And all of her friends said, "Of course, Topeka. Not a problem. We would love to be there as long as we can help you." So they all went home, and the next morning, rather predictably, the mum woke up. She said, "Topeka, put on your black dress and go and fetch some water from the well." So off Topeka went. And when she got there, all of her friends were stood around wearing black dresses. And out of the bushes came the big burly man. He looked. He couldn't believe what was going on. He ran up to one of them. He said, "Are you Topeka?" From across the circle, somebody called out, "I'm Topeka." He ran across. He said, "Are you Topeka?" From the other side of the circle, somebody called, "I'm Topeka." He ran across. He said, "Are you Topeka?" And all at once, everybody called out, "We're Topeka too." And the man put his hands on his head. He turned and he ran off into the forest. And Topeka went around and she thanked all of her friends for she had been saved again. And Topeka headed home. And Topeka went into the kitchen, but just after she arrived, the man turned up, and now he was really angry. He went up to Topeka's mother. He said, "You've tricked me twice. You won't trick me again. If you do, I will come back here and I will take you instead of the daughter." And the mother said, "I'm really sorry. She only has 2 dresses, so tomorrow I will make sure she is back there in her red dress, and I am sure that this time you will be able to take her." And off he went. Topeka thought, how can I possibly ask my friends to help me again? And this time I'm going to ask them for help for the same thing. And she was really worried. How could she possibly keep going back and asking for help? But she plucked up the courage and she went into the village and she knocked on the doors. And she said, "Could you please help me again tomorrow? Come to the well wearing your red dress." And all of her friends said, "Of course, Topeka. Anything to help you. We would love to come and be there." So Topeka walked back as she went to bed, and in the morning she woke up and rather predictably, her mother said, "Topeka, put on your red dress, go down to the well and fetch some water." So Topeka did. She headed down to the well, and when she arrived, all of her friends were stood around, wearing red dresses. The man came out of the bushes. He walked up to one, he said, "Are you Topeka?" And from across the circle, somebody called out, "I'm Topeka." He ran across, he said, "Are you Topeka?" From the other side of the circle, somebody else called, "I'm Topeka." And he ran around screaming, he said, "Are you Topeka?" And all of the friends, all at once, called out, "We're Topeka too." And the big burly man turned and he ran as fast as he could through the forest until he arrived at the cottage. And when he got to the cottage, he banged on the door and the mother opened it and he picked her up. He threw her over his shoulder and he disappeared off into the forest. Never, ever, ever to be seen again. When Topeka and her friends got back to the cottage, they realised what had happened. And with her evil mother gone, Topeka and all of her friends moved into the beautiful cottage in the wood and lived happily ever after. And that is the story of Topeka. A great little story about always being there for your friends. Topeka was really, really worried that she had to keep going asking for help. Sometimes asking for help can be difficult, but every time she went, even when she asked for help for the same thing, her friends, because they were true friends, were always willing to be there for her. So it's really important, if we have friends like that we treat them well and always return those kind gestures too. So I hope you enjoyed that story. A little bit different, coming from the fireside, but equally lovely to sit here and tell as well. So thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.